The diner was quiet that evening, with soft lighting casting warm glows over the polished tables. The smell of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon filled the air. A few patrons chatted quietly, the occasional clatter of silverware punctuating the calm. In the corner, a jukebox played an old classic, adding a nostalgic hum to the otherwise serene atmosphere. Steven Seagal walked in casually, wearing a simple shirt and jeans, his presence almost unassuming. Yet there was a weight in his steps, a quiet confidence that seemed to settle the air around him. He nodded politely to the cashier, scanned the diner for a table, and chose one by the window. He sat down, calmly placing his jacket on the chair beside him and opening the menu. His movements were deliberate, slow, and precise, like a man who had mastered both the body and the mind. Then he noticed the bully. At the counter, a loud, overconfident diner, a young man in his 20s with an air of arrogance, was speaking over the staff, tossing sarcastic remarks. When his gaze landed on Seagal, his expression twisted into a smirk. Well, look who decided to show up," he sneered, loud enough for Seagal to hear. "What's the big celebrity doing in a place like this? Waiting for someone to bow down." Seagal didn't react. He didn't even glance up immediately. He simply continued scanning the menu, sipping his water, radiating calm, collected composure. The bully, misinterpreting the silence for fear, stepped closer. "Hey, I'm talking to you," he barked, shoving Seagal's menu slightly with a finger. "You gonna respond, or are you just gonna sit there?" Other diners began to notice the tension. Some whispered to each other, glancing toward the corner table. Phones peeked out from pockets, cameras ready to capture the inevitable clash. The diner that once felt calm now carried a subtle, electric tension, like the moment before a storm hits. Seagal finally looked up, his gaze sharp, unwavering, but completely calm. He didn't shout. He didn't snap. He simply met the bully's eyes with a quiet intensity that made the room go still. And in that moment, everyone realized one thing. This wasn't going to be an ordinary confrontation. Somewhere deep inside, the bully felt it too, the sense that he had just poked a tiger, unaware of the claws waiting beneath the surface. The diner, the patrons, even the air itself, seemed to hold its breath. No one knew what Seagal would do next. But one thing was certain, the bully's arrogance had just walked into a room where it would soon pay the price. The diner had gone from calm to charged in the blink of an eye. Steven Seagal sat at his table, sipping water, his presence radiating an unshakable stillness. The bully, misjudging the silence for weakness, leaned back in his chair, smirking, clearly convinced that the quiet would break any moment. "Hey," the bully said loudly, slamming a hand on the table. "You just gonna sit there? You think you're some kind of legend? Huh." Seagal didn't flinch. He kept his gaze steady, his eyes almost unreadable, like someone who had seen far too much to be rattled by childish posturing. The quiet intensity in his posture made the air around him heavy. Every diner in the place was now paying attention, sensing the shift, sensing that something was about to happen, but not knowing what. The bully's smirk widened. He leaned closer, jostling Seagal's chair, laughing mockingly. "Come on, buddy. Say something. Aren't you gonna prove you're the big deal everyone says you are?" Seagal finally spoke, but his voice was low and calm, almost a whisper. "I've already proven myself. Just not to you." The words hit the bully like ice water. He blinked, unsure whether to scoff or escalate further. But arrogance doesn't yield easily. With a laugh, he leaned in again, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Oh, so now you're ignoring me? That's rich. Let's see how tough you really are. I dare you to move. I dare you to show some action." Seagal still didn't rise from his seat. His calmness only made the bully more aggressive, more impatient. It was as if the quiet intensity was a challenge in itself, daring him to overstep. At this point, other diners began to murmur. Phones came out. Some people whispered nervously, glancing between the two men. Others, sensing the potential for chaos, leaned closer, curious. The tension had shifted from the bully and Seagal to the entire diner. Everyone was now part of this silent standoff. The bully, growing bolder, began making physical gestures, shoving the table slightly, gesturing wildly, even stepping dangerously close to Seagal. "Come on. Prove you're not all talk. I dare you." Seagal's expression didn't change. He slowly placed his hands on the table, fingers relaxed, his gaze unblinking. His calm presence was magnetic. Every movement, every pause, drew the attention of the entire diner. Some diners whispered, "Is that Steven Seagal?" A few pulled out their phones to record, excitement building. Others shifted in their seats, sensing that this confrontation might go viral. Have you ever seen someone publicly humiliated and remain completely calm? Comment your city and country below. The bully, misreading the lack of reaction as fear, laughed louder, projecting his arrogance across the diner. "You're all just scared. I'm not scared. I'll teach him a lesson he won't forget." He slammed his fist on the table again, rattling Seagal's water glass. Other diners flinched, some instinctively moving slightly away from the table. The bully's energy was erratic, uncontrolled, desperate to dominate. But Seagal remained a picture of composure. Every shift of his gaze, every slow breath, conveyed quiet strength. His eyes met the bully's, not with anger, but with an intensity that made the air in the room thick. It was the kind of calm that made a person pause, reevaluate, and feel a sudden weight of humility. The bully's attempts to provoke were now failing in real time. The diners watched as the dynamic shifted subtly but unmistakably. The bully's confidence began to waver, while Seagal's calm control grew more commanding. The more the bully tried to dominate the scene, the more the diner sensed that he was losing the invisible battle. Every whisper, every camera click, every nervous glance from the patrons amplified the tension. It was no longer just a confrontation between two men. It was a study in control, patience, and the quiet power that commands respect without raising a voice. Seagal remained seated, letting the bully make every mistake, every misstep, every overconfidence flare. The bully didn't know it yet, but the price of his arrogance was about to be paid, instantly and in front of everyone. The diner had shifted from a place of quiet meals to a stage for an inevitable showdown. Steven Seagal remained seated, calm as ever, his eyes locked on the bully with a measured intensity. Every diner in the room was now acutely aware of the tension. Whispers and phone cameras created an undercurrent of electricity. The bully, feeling the eyes of everyone on him, decided it was time to escalate. He slammed his fist harder on the table, rattling the cutlery and sending a few napkins flying. "Come on! Are you gonna sit there and let me make a fool out of you? Huh? Move. Show us what you've got." His voice echoed off the walls, forcing the few remaining patrons who hadn't noticed to look up. Seagal didn't flinch. He continued to sit, his breathing even, hands resting lightly on the table. There was no anger in him, only calm precision, like a predator waiting for the right moment. The contrast between the bully's wild energy and Seagal's unshakable poise made the room lean in collectively, waiting for the inevitable spark. The bully, frustrated by Seagal's lack of reaction, reached over and tried to grab the edge of his plate. "What's the matter? Can't even handle a little fun?" he sneered. The diners gasped, unsure if the bully would cross the line into violence. A couple of brave patrons murmured among themselves, "This isn't right. Someone should do something." Seagal finally rose, slowly, deliberately, and with such controlled grace that the room felt the shift in air pressure. He didn't make any aggressive moves. He didn't swing, punch, or shout. He simply stood, towering over the bully with a quiet authority that silenced the room instantly. His gaze alone was enough to make the bully hesitate, a split second that would cost him dearly. "Is that all you've got?" Seagal's voice was calm, almost conversational, but every word carried weight, precision, and threat. The bully froze, the smirk fading from his face as he suddenly realized that this wasn't a man to provoke carelessly. Every diner felt the room hold its breath. The jukebox music, the chatter, the silverware clinking, it all seemed to fade away. Some patrons quietly started recording, whispering to one another, "That's Steven Seagal, the real Seagal." Others leaned back, wide-eyed, sensing that the bully had just bitten off more than he could chew. The air was heavy with anticipation. The bully tried to recover. "You're bluffing. Everyone knows this is just for show." His voice quivered slightly, betraying the first signs of panic. He took a step back, almost subconsciously, as if the distance itself would shield him from the storm of calm force that now emanated from Seagal. Seagal didn't move closer. He didn't raise his hands. He simply tilted his head slightly and held the bully's gaze, and the intensity of that stare was enough to make the bully's overconfidence crumble. Patrons whispered again, some nudging each other, "He's not even doing anything, and the bully is scared." The bully, realizing that words and aggression were no longer effective, attempted to regain control through intimidation. He grabbed a nearby chair, waving it slightly, trying to seem larger, more threatening. But the motion was erratic, desperate, and all the diners could see the fear behind the bravado. Seagal exhaled slowly, his calm aura almost palpable, and the bully's hands began to shake slightly. The difference in energy was stark. Where the bully was chaotic and panicked, Seagal was precise, collected, and quietly lethal. The room could feel it. The diner had become a pressure cooker, and the bully was the only one unaware of the heat building around him. If you were a bystander, would you intervene now or wait to see what happens? Comment, intervene, or watch below. Seagal finally made a subtle move, a step forward, measured and deliberate. The bully flinched. It wasn't a strike, it wasn't a threat in the traditional sense, but the controlled precision conveyed one unmistakable message: "Crossing me has a price." The tension in the room skyrocketed. Every patron was silent, every phone camera recording, every eye fixed on the showdown. The bully realized, too late, that his arrogance had been his undoing. Every action he had taken to provoke Seagal had only amplified the master's silent power. Seagal stopped just inches away, his calm gaze boring into the bully. The realization hit the man in that moment. He had been completely outclassed. Not with violence, not with force, but with sheer presence and quiet authority. The diner went completely silent, waiting for the next move. And in that silence, it became obvious. The bully was about to pay the price for underestimating Steven Seagal. The diner was silent now, every patron frozen in anticipation. Even the jukebox seemed muted, the music drowned out by the invisible force that had taken over the room. Steven Seagal stood just a few inches from the bully, calm and composed, radiating an unspoken authority that sent shivers down the spines of everyone present. The bully's smirk had vanished completely, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. Whispers started circulating around the diner. "Wait, isn't that Steven Seagal?" one patron murmured, nudging a friend who was recording the confrontation on his phone. Another, wide-eyed, whispered, "The real Seagal? No way." Phones quietly moved into position as diners began documenting the moment, careful not to make it obvious to the bully. The bully, still desperate to regain control, puffed out his chest and tried to force a laugh. "What? You think your movies make you tough? Huh." His voice was louder than necessary, an attempt to assert dominance, but it rang hollow in the tension-filled room. The more he tried, the more obvious his panic became. Seagal didn't respond verbally. He simply tilted his head slightly, his eyes locking with the bully's, conveying calm confidence. Every subtle movement of his body screamed discipline, experience, and power. The room felt the shift instantly. Where once the bully had seemed in command, now it was clear who truly held the authority. A diner finally spoke up, unable to contain their astonishment. "Guys, That's Steven Seagal, the martial arts legend. The recognition spread like wildfire. Murmurs rose, diners nudged each other, pointing discreetly. "Oh my God, that's Seagal. He's the real deal." Phones clicked, recording, while some diners leaned in, eager to witness what would happen next. Even the kitchen staff peeked out nervously, sensing that the tension was no longer between two men. It was a spectacle that would be remembered. The bully, however, had yet to fully grasp the situation. He glanced around nervously, noticing the stares, the phones, the whispers, but instead of realizing the truth, he assumed Seagal was just putting on an act. "Stop staring, everyone. It's just a guy. Don't let him fool you." His words came out sharp, defensive, betraying the first cracks in his confidence. Seagal's response was simple, almost imperceptible, a subtle shift in stance, a calm, deliberate exhale. He didn't mock. He didn't raise his voice. And yet, the effect was immediate. The bully's bravado faltered. His gestures became erratic, jerky, and overly forceful, a desperate attempt to reclaim control. Every movement was amplified in the silence of the diner, making his insecurity painfully obvious. Other diners began to whisper to each other, sharing what they knew about Seagal. "He's not just an actor. He's a real martial arts master. Remember that stunt in that movie? That's nothing compared to real life." The aura of respect around Seagal intensified with every mention, while the bully's confidence visibly diminished. Seagal took another measured step forward, his gaze unwavering. The bully backed up slightly, clutching the edge of the table for support. His face turned red with frustration, and the panic in his eyes was unmistakable. He had underestimated the man in front of him, thinking arrogance and loudness could dominate calm skill. Now, the truth was undeniable. He was outclassed. The diner's atmosphere changed completely. Patrons who had initially been mere spectators now leaned in, captivated by the unfolding drama. Phones were raised, capturing every second of the confrontation. Whispered comments grew louder. "He's going to teach him a lesson. I can't believe this is happening." The energy in the room shifted from anticipation to awe. Seagal didn't speak yet. He let the silence do the work. Every subtle movement, every steady breath, was enough to communicate dominance without aggression. The bully's attempt to assert himself, once filled with confidence, had now become almost comical in contrast to Seagal's poised control. It was in this silence, this tension-filled pause, that the entire diner, and the bully himself, realized the inevitable. The man they had been mocking, attempting to humiliate, was a legend. And legends, as everyone now understood, didn't need to shout or fight to command respect. The bully's arrogance had led him into a trap of his own making. With every silent second that passed, the realization sank in: he had misjudged the wrong person. The diners could feel the moment approaching its climax, the moment when the bully would finally pay the price for his overconfidence. And the room held its collective breath, knowing the tipping point was near. The tension in the diner was unbearable. Patrons leaned in, whispering to each other, eyes glued to the corner table where the drama had unfolded. Steven Seagal stood just a few feet from the bully, radiating calm authority. Every muscle, every breath, every subtle gesture communicated one message: he was in complete control, and there was no need to fight recklessly. The bully, desperate to regain his dominance, tried one last bold move. He shoved a chair slightly, causing a loud clatter, and pointed at Seagal, yelling, "See? You're just a guy. I could take you any time." His voice carried bravado, but his hands trembled, betraying the fear creeping in. Seagal's response was measured. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't lunge or make a threatening gesture. Instead, he took a single step forward, slow, deliberate, and precise. The movement alone, minimal yet intentional, caused the bully to stumble back, momentarily off balance. It was the subtle mastery of presence, the kind of power that doesn't need to strike but is felt deeply by anyone in proximity. The diner collectively held its breath. Every patron was watching, some with phones recording, some whispering in awe. A quiet murmur ran through the crowd. "He doesn't even have to touch him. Look at that." Seagal finally spoke, his voice calm but commanding. "Arrogance always meets its consequence. You wanted to humiliate me, but you forgot one thing: respect is earned, not demanded." The bully froze. His eyes widened, his smirk fading. He opened his mouth to reply, but no words came. The room seemed to shrink around him, the invisible weight of Seagal's presence pressing down, exposing his overconfidence and ignorance. A patron whispered to a friend, "I think he's about to get schooled, and not in the movies." Phones captured every second, ensuring this moment would spread far beyond the diner walls. The bully tried one more bluff, raising his hands as if to challenge Seagal physically. But the effort was hollow. Every muscle in Seagal's body was poised for action, yet calm, controlled, and effortless. He didn't need to strike. The intensity of his presence was punishment enough. Then came the moment of subtle but undeniable authority. With a slow, controlled movement, Seagal stepped to the side and lightly nudged the bully's shoulder with the back of his hand, not with force but precision. The bully stumbled, tripping slightly, spilling a drink onto his own lap. The room gasped. Laughter and whispers erupted simultaneously, the tables having turned instantly. Seagal didn't gloat. He didn't raise his voice or taunt. He simply returned to his seat, calmly adjusting his jacket, as if nothing had happened. The bully, drenched in humiliation and realizing his public failure, tried to recover his composure, but it was too late. The diner had already witnessed the complete reversal of power. The other diners now openly whispered their admiration. "Wow, that was incredible. He didn't even have to hit him. Look at how he handled that." Phones captured slow-motion reactions, close-ups of wide-eyed onlookers, the bully's flustered expression, and Seagal's composed stance. Every frame told the story better than words ever could. The bully, red-faced and speechless, finally slumped into his chair, muttering under his breath. His previous arrogance had evaporated, replaced by the unmistakable sting of public humiliation. The room's energy shifted completely. The patrons who had once felt tension now felt awe. Respect and admiration for Seagal filled the air, while the bully's confidence lay shattered, a cautionary tale of misjudging someone far more skilled and composed than himself. The lesson was clear to everyone in the diner. Calm authority and mastery far outweigh arrogance and reckless aggression. The diner was now completely under Seagal's control, though he remained seated, calm, and composed. The bully, once brimming with arrogance, sat frozen, drenched in both sweat and humiliation. Every diner in the room could feel the shift. The predator had become the prey, and the lesson was unfolding in real time. The bully tried to stand, attempting to regain even a shred of dignity, but his movements were jerky and uncoordinated. His earlier confidence had crumbled entirely. Seagal, observing with precise awareness, didn't raise a hand or force the confrontation. Instead, he allowed the bully to stumble into his own mistakes. "Watch your step," Seagal said quietly, his voice calm but carrying a weight that made every diner pause. The bully, distracted and panicked, shifted on the slick tile floor and nearly toppled a chair. In one swift, precise motion, Seagal guided his own chair to block the bully's path subtly. The bully tripped over the table's leg, spilling the rest of his drink across the floor, creating a dramatic, almost cinematic scene of instant karma. Gasps echoed across the diner. Some patrons covered their mouths to stifle laughter, while others couldn't help but cheer silently. Phones were raised to record every second of the unfolding humiliation. The bully's arrogance had met its match, and the consequences were now painfully public. Seagal remained utterly calm, finishing his sip of water before placing the glass gently back on the table. Not a single angry gesture, not a single shouted word, yet his authority was absolute. The patrons in the diner could feel the lesson in every silent movement he made. Composure, precision, and mastery trump arrogance and recklessness. The bully finally looked up, dripping wet from the spilled drink, red-faced and utterly humiliated. He tried to argue, to save face, but his words faltered. He was a man exposed in front of a room full of witnesses, each capturing his humiliation for posterity. The diner's patrons had become the jury, and the verdict was unanimous. He had overstepped, and now he would pay. Seagal stood, not to intimidate, but to restore order. Each step was measured, his presence magnetic. He leaned slightly toward the bully, who shrank back instinctively. "Respect is earned," Seagal said simply, his tone neutral yet commanding. "It's not demanded. And arrogance without skill always finds its price." The bully tried to respond, but his voice cracked, betraying fear and embarrassment. Seagal's subtle display of control had rendered words unnecessary. The entire diner understood what had just happened. A simple act of arrogance had been met with precise, calm mastery, and the consequences were immediate and unavoidable. Have you ever seen someone get instant karma for arrogance? Comment yes or no below. Patrons began whispering excitedly, recounting every movement. "Did you see that? He didn't even touch him aggressively, and the bully fell." Seagal didn't need to fight, he just showed presence and control. The diner had transformed into a stage where skill and composure had triumphed, and every observer was witnessing the lesson firsthand. Seagal returned to his seat, sitting calmly as if nothing had happened. He picked up his fork, continued eating, and radiated serenity. The bully, now fully aware of his misjudgment, slumped in his chair, drenched, defeated, and publicly humiliated. His arrogance had evaporated entirely, replaced by a mixture of fear, embarrassment, and reluctant respect. The diners, fully engaged now, whispered to each other about the power of composure. Phones captured close-ups of Seagal's calm face, the bully's disastrous attempts at dominance, and the subtle but undeniable aura of mastery that radiated from him. The event was already being shared online, destined to go viral, as the visual proof of instant karma and quiet authority became undeniable. Seagal's lesson was simple but profound. Power is silent, composure is lethal, and arrogance always pays its price, instantly, if you misjudge the wrong person. The diner had returned to a semblance of normalcy, but the air remained thick with tension and awe. Steven Seagal sat at his table, calm and collected, casually eating his meal as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. Meanwhile, the bully sat drenched and humiliated, the reality of his arrogance laid bare in front of every witness. Patrons whispered excitedly among themselves. "Did you see that? He didn't even fight him, and the guy fell apart. I can't believe this." Seagal didn't even raise a hand, and the bully paid the price. Phones continued recording, the videos capturing every second of the confrontation, the subtle movements, the precise stance, the calm authority that had completely dismantled the bully's overconfidence. Within minutes, someone uploaded the clip online. Social media exploded. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all lit up with reactions. Comments poured in. "Wow, the master didn't even move. Instant karma. That bully got exactly what he deserved." The video racked up thousands of views in an hour, then hundreds of thousands, and soon went viral worldwide. The bully's humiliation became a cautionary tale. Online, people mocked him mercilessly while praising Seagal for his calm mastery. Memes circulated showing the moment of his stumble, juxtaposed with Seagal's composed, stoic face. News outlets began reporting, "Black belt humiliates arrogant diner bully, Steven Seagal's calm mastery goes viral." Meanwhile, Seagal didn't gloat. He didn't issue statements or post on social media. He simply finished his meal, quietly nodding to the few patrons who offered respectful greetings. His composure was a lesson in itself. Power doesn't need to boast. True authority is recognized instantly by those who witness it. The bully, meanwhile, became an object of public ridicule. Comments on social media criticized his arrogance, videos of the incident were shared repeatedly, and anyone who had been in the diner knew the full story. His attempt to assert dominance had backfired spectacularly, leaving him not only embarrassed in person but now permanently immortalized online as an example of overconfidence meeting instant consequence. Patrons who had witnessed the event firsthand shared their own accounts, describing Seagal's precision, calmness, and subtle authority. "It was surreal," one diner posted. "I've never seen anyone so calm and commanding. He didn't even need to fight, and yet the bully fell apart. Instant respect." The story spread beyond the diner, inspiring martial artists, fans, and everyday people alike. Everyone could see the lesson: arrogance without skill is doomed. Calm mastery and controlled authority always win in the end. Even days later, the video continued to gain traction. People posted analysis, slow-motion breakdowns, and commentary on Seagal's posture, his timing, and the bully's predictable reactions. It wasn't just a viral clip, it had become a study in discipline, composure, and the power of silent presence. Seagal's actions reminded the world that strength isn't always physical. True mastery is as much mental as it is physical. One doesn't need to raise a fist to command respect. A single, calm presence can dismantle arrogance in seconds. By the time Seagal left the diner, the crowd had dispersed, but the impact lingered. Patrons whispered among themselves, replaying the moment in their minds. Online, the clip continued to circulate, and the message spread far beyond the walls of that small diner. Humility, composure, and quiet mastery will always triumph over arrogance and recklessness. And as the bully walked away, drenched, embarrassed, and humbled, the world watched and learned the same lesson, one that would be shared for years to come. If you believe calm mastery always wins, comment respect below and share this story with someone who needs to see it.